I'm Bill Monacle, and I am your golf pro. Welcome back. If you saw my first video, we talked about clubs and selecting a set of clubs, ones that feel good to you. But if you look at sets, even these beginner sets, very few of them come complete. Now you're allowed 14 clubs in your bag, so how many of those are going to be woods, how many are going to be regular set of irons, and you can even get into the hybrids. There's so many variables nowadays, it's just amazing. But when you get into the scoring clubs, what we call the wedges and the putters, you know, there's just a lot of information out there and a lot of different kind of clubs. So what I'm going to do is hopefully simplify some of that for you today. First thing to know is normally in a set of clubs in your irons, there's about 4 degrees of difference between each club and the loft of the club. And obviously loft, we're talking about how much it faces upwards, the face of the golf club going up. The higher the number, the more loft. So that's why you have like a 7, 8, 9 pitching wedge. And so there's 4 degrees in between each of those. Normally a set will stop at a pitching wedge, which is about 48 degrees, somewhere in that area. And then you get into a sand wedge, which is somewhere around 55. You'll find them 54, 55, 56, and then a lob wedge at about 60 degrees. But along with these varying degrees of loft, depending on the club and what it is that's set up with your set, to get something fairly well matched, some of them come with the adjunct wedges available. But for the ones that don't, just know it's very much the same thing. You want something that's going to feel good in your hands. And the conditions that you play under is another thing. One of the big things missing for a long time was something called a gap wedge. Now a gap wedge used to be you'd have a pitching wedge and then a sand wedge. So that was going from 48 to 56. So they came up with a gap to fill in that gap. They started making 52 degree wedges. You know, some of them will vary. Mine has the degree on the heel of it. Others will have a G or some other form of identification right on the toe of the club. But when we talk about loft, you know, that's easy enough to figure out. But when you talk about degrees of bounce, there's where the real difference comes in. If you get a sand wedge with, say mine here, this is a 60 degree sand wedge and it's got about 14 degrees of bounce. What they're talking about in bounce, now most clubs are made for the shaft to be slightly ahead of the face at address. So bounce is, if you can see this, pan in here a little bit, you can see the leading edge of the club is not on the ground. And that's why they call it bounce, because this back edge is going to hit and bounce off of the ground. Sometimes, you know, if you're in like a packed sand trap, it's going to bounce and it's going to go into the ball because you're trying to hit behind it and make the club go under it. So that degree of bounce is going to vary. That is a 60 degree sand wedge, so it's got some bounce. This is a 60 degree lob wedge, and you can see how much closer that leading edge is to the ground, so you're going to be able to get down under the ball a whole lot easier. So just know that the degree of loft isn't the only thing you want to look for. You want to know how much bounce and what is the normal conditions of your golf course. If it's really dry, you're going to want that lob wedge, because any bounce at all is going to cause the club to hit the ground and then go into the ball, and you're going to end up with a missed shot. So that's the things you want to think about when you're picking a wedge. Like I said, besides the fact that it feels good, why does it have to feel good? Well, because when you're not taking a full swing, it really helps to be able to feel what you're doing with the golf club. So a little bit of a, you know, try your buddies out before you go buy one. Ask around, see what people like. And there are a number of different makes. Once again, just depends on what you want to do with it. But the real scoring club, the putter, the flat stick, the Texas wedge, when you get into a golf shop and you start looking at putters, it's like, oh my, well, I'm more like a kid in a candy store, but most people are going to be, there are just too many choices. Once again, pick something up. Do you like the heft of it, the weight? Does it feel good in your hands? A little bit later, we're going to get into the techniques of putting and some of the psychology of it, but just for the idea of putters and picking one that's going to work fairly well for you. I've always been a bit of a sucker for something that looks a little odd. You can see the shape of this putter, but it had some good information behind it. This was the very first golf club granted a mechanical patent. Because of the shape of it, it supposedly put the full force of the stroke all the way across the face. So you no longer had to hit right in the center to be able to get the full stroke advantage. You know, if you hit it out on the heel, it's supposed to also continue to make the ball roll in the direction and as far as you originally wanted it to. How you can tell that's not necessarily true is to hold this up. And if you kind of tap your putter like this, you can see hitting it in the center, it goes pretty straight back. But if you start hitting it on the toe, it wants to twist. So along came a new generation of putters. They started putting more weight towards the heel and towards the toe. And I like this one a lot because it was recommended by an LPGA pro, Debbie Massey. They started putting a plastic face on it, rubberized plastic compound that really helped with the feel of it. So that's why I like this a whole lot. Not only that, when you take a look at the toe and the heel weight, that reduces twisting. So of course it's good in the center, but if you hit it on the edges, it's not going to twist off as much. Taking that another step forward, the Carbide company came out and they put three metals together. They put aluminum in the center, they put tungsten, very heavy metal, on the toe and the heel, and then they put another brass insert in here so you'd have the soft feel. But once again, in the age of computers and everything, they found out that this resisted twisting more than any other putter. You can see hitting it out here has very little effect. Once again, there's always that sweet spot in the center, but unless you're going to do a lot of practice, you're not always going to hit the sweet spot. So what I was looking for was something that was going to make my misses better. And then because I like to practice as much as possible from now and then, the shorter putters started bothering my back. So along came the big long putters. So I started using this so I could stand a little more upright. Once again, back to the design of having most of the mass of the club behind it, but you can also see this has kind of a winged effect to it so that it gives you a good visual as well as helping to keep the force of the stroke all the way through it. And this is the latest and greatest that I've gone to. I know there are some other new things out there, but this is the old Rife 2-bar. Dual weights back here to resist the twisting, made with grooves on the face to help impart roll on the ball so that now I can just stand up. And the other beauty of this is it comes with an adjustable lie, meaning if I want to stand farther away from it, I'm not going to have the heel, the toe off the ground, whichever way I would go with it. So it's adjustable to fit me. Really love this club. It's what I'm using right now, but you can see so many variables. Depends on how are you going to stand, how are you going to practice. If you're going to practice enough, almost anything you can make work. But if you're a once-a-week golfer, then try to reduce things to their simplest method of use, and then you're going to have better, more consistent results. So with all that, I thank you very much for being here. If you like what you see, please be sure to leave a comment. Share this on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever your friends are. Just let them know about it. So until the next time, I'm Bill Monaco. I'm your golf pro, and if you're going to miss them straight. Bye-bye.